EcoHub podcast. Welcome back, deep divers. You ready to put on our business hats today?
Always ready to talk business. What's on the agenda?
Well, today we're going to dive into this really fascinating report about tourism in Yamagata City. You know, like snowy mountains and hot springs.
Oh, Yamagata. Yeah, I've heard it's beautiful.
It is. And this report really breaks down the tourism scene there. It's called Analysis of Tourism Big Data in Yamagata City, Yamagata Prefecture.
Catchy title.
Right. And it was just published this month, February 2025, by the Tohoku branch of the Development Bank of Japan.
Ah, the Development Bank of Japan. So we know the data is going to be good.
Oh, yeah. They had some help from DBJ Digital Solutions, too, so like extra techie.
Nice. So what kind of insights are we talking about here? Like, are they just counting how many tourists come through?
Well, they do that, but it's much more than that. They really dissect the data to understand these trends. It's kind of
like economic detectives, but for tourists.
exactly, like why are people coming to Yamagata City? Where are they going afterwards?
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So set the scene for me. Where exactly is Yamagata City?
So it's nestled in Yamagata Prefecture, a region known for its natural beauty, especially Mount Zhao. You know, those snow monsters?
Oh, yeah. The trees covered in ice and snow. I've seen pictures. They're incredible.
They are. And beyond the scenery, this report really digs into the economic side of tourism there. And it highlights this really interesting dynamic. Domestic tourism is down a bit, but international tourism is on the rise.
Huh. That's interesting. Is that something we're seeing in a lot of places?
It is. A lot of destinations are experiencing that same shift.
So why does that matter so much for Yamagata City specifically?
Well, because international tourists tend to spend more than domestic tourists, right?
Oh, right. When you're traveling internationally, you're probably planning a longer trip, more immersive. You're likely to, splurge more on experiences and souvenirs.
Exactly. So attracting more international tourists could be a real economic boost for this city.
It's like basic economics, supply and demand, right? The more international tourists are interested in Yamagata City, the more the city can kind of capitalize on that demand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did they get this data? Did they, follow tourists around with little drones?
Haha, not quite. They use something called mobile spatial statistics. So basically, they analyze anonymized location data from cell phones to track the movements of international tourists who stayed in Yamagata City for at least 2 hours between June 2023 and May 2024.
So, digital footprints for tourists.
Yeah, exactly.
And over that year, they recorded over 137,214 international visitors, which is pretty impressive.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
And almost 60% of those visitors came during the winter months, which makes sense, you know, those snowy landscapes.
Classic seasonality, right? Like ski resorts packed in the winter and quiet in the summer.
Yep. But here's where things get interesting. The report found that roughly half of those tourists didn't actually stay overnight in Yamagata City.
Wait, what? So they flew all the way to Japan, visited this beautiful city, and then just left?
Yeah, it was kind of surprising.
So where were they going? Were they, scared off by a snow monster?
Maybe, but more likely they were on what they call a multi-destination trip. So they were using Yamagata City as a stop on a larger itinerary, a sampler platter of Japan.
Okay, that makes sense. A little bit of Yamagata, a little bit of Tokyo, maybe a side of Kyoto. Got it.
Exactly. So who exactly are these international visitors? Are there any surprises in where they're coming from?
Well, get this. Taiwanese tourists make up a whopping 65.7% of international visitors.
Wow, that's huge. Why so many visitors from Taiwan?
Well, there are a few reasons. First, there are direct flights from Taiwan to Sendai Airport, which is pretty close to Yamagata City.
Right, so easy access.
Exactly. And there's also just this growing interest in Japanese culture in Taiwan, especially among younger generations.
So it's a combination of convenience and cultural appeal. Makes sense. What about other nationalities? Any other big players?
Yeah, so Thailand, Hong Kong, and China also send a significant number of visitors, especially during those winter months.
Drawing in by the smell, I bet.
Probably. It's iconic. And what about Western tourists? Are they braving the Japanese winter too?
They are, but in smaller numbers. About 10% of the total.
Okay, so still a decent chunk.
Yeah. And it's interesting, though, we see some variations there. Australians seem to love the winter, while Americans and Germans tend to visit in the spring and autumn.
Oh, interesting. So different strokes for different folks. Some are chasing the snow. Others are looking for milder weather.
Exactly. And maybe, those cherry blossoms in spring.
Ah, of course.
Like Yamagata City has something to offer everyone, no matter what their travel style is.
Right. But let's circle back to that thing about tourists not staying overnight. The report digs into that a bit more, like comparing overnight stay rates by different nationalities.
All right, let's see if we can crack this case.
Well, while Taiwanese tourists were the most numerous overall, Hong Kong, Australia, and China had the highest overnight stay rates.
So even though Taiwanese tourists are the biggest group, they're less likely to spend the night. That is interesting. What do you make of that?
It really reinforces that idea that many Taiwanese tourists are treating Yamagata City as a quick stopover, like maybe squeezing it in between visits to Tokyo and Kyoto, for example.
Yeah, I could see that. You only have so much time when you're on vacation.
Right. But think about it, if Yamagata City could figure out how to entice those tourists to stay longer, even just one extra night, it could make a big difference for their economy.
Right, because even if they're just staying for a night, they're still spending money on accommodations, dining, maybe some souvenirs.
Exactly. It's all about encouraging those longer stays and higher spending. And that's where really understanding those travel patterns is so valuable.
If you know where they're coming from, where they're going next, you can really tailor what Yamagata City offers to better meet their needs.
Yeah, and maybe even convince them to stick around a little longer.
It's like strategic tourism matchmaking, finding that perfect match between what the city has to offer and what those tourists actually want.
I like it.
But before we get too lost in strategic planning, let's dig a little deeper into those overnight stays. You mentioned some patterns related to nationalities and where they like to stay.
It absolutely. So the report takes a closer look at three key areas in Yamagata City. Mount Zhao, the area around Yamagata Station, and that famous Yamadera Temple.
Okay, so the big three.
Right. And no surprise, Mount Zhao, with its stunning snowy landscapes and hot springs, that's a major draw.
Okay, not shocking. It's what people picture when they think of Yamagata City.
Yeah, especially for those winter-loving tourists. But Yamadera Temple, a beautiful mountain temple, they get lots of visitors during the day, but almost nobody stays overnight.
I guess that makes sense. It's a place you visit for a few hours, enjoy the beauty and the history, and then move on.
Yeah. But when it comes to those overnight stays, we see some pretty interesting patterns based on nationality.
Okay, tell me more. I'm fascinated by this.
So Asian tourists tend to favor the area around Yamagata Station in the winter. Makes sense, it's a central hub with lots of hotels, restaurants, and easy access to transportation.
So it's all about convenience.
Pretty much, especially if you're on a shorter trip. But Western tourists, they tend to prefer Zhao Onsen.
Oh, Zhao Onsen. That charming little hot spring town right on the mountain.
The one and only.
So they're going for that full immersive experience, soaking in the hot springs, surrounded by those snowy peaks, maybe a nice Japanese dinner.
It does sound pretty idyllic, doesn't it?
Right out of a travel magazine. And it really highlights how different tourists are motivated by different things. Some want convenience, others want that immersive experience.
Totally.
It's like a tourism choose-your-own-adventure. Different paths, different experiences, but all leading to an appreciation of Yamagata City. But hey, let's not forget about those average stay durations. Didn't we say that Australians win the prize for the longest stays?
We did. Australians clock in at an average of 3.88 days, even in the summer.
Wow. What's drawing them to stay for so long? Is it the lure of those legendary powder slopes on Mount Zhao? Or are they, venturing beyond the city to explore those hidden gems we talked about?
It's probably a mix of both. Australians, they love their outdoor adventure, so they might be drawn to those hiking trails and, well, all the natural beauty of the region. And they might be using Yamagata City as a base for exploring the surrounding areas, taking day trips to all those charming towns and hot spring villages scattered throughout the prefecture.
So they're not just checking Yamagata City off their list, they're really immersing themselves in the region. And those longer stays mean more spending, which is great for the local economy.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
But on the other hand, tourists from Taiwan and Thailand tend to have much shorter stays, which again points to that idea of maybe being on those prepackaged tour groups, moving quickly through multiple destinations.
It's like a whirlwind tour of Japan. They get a taste of everything, but maybe not enough time to really delve deep into any one place.
Yeah, true. But at least they get that taste of Yamagata City's unique charm. And maybe it'll entice them to come back for a longer visit in the future. Who knows?
Exactly. And that actually brings us to one of the key takeaways from this whole report. Yamagata City has amazing potential to attract those higher spending tourists, the ones who really want to stay longer and get a deeper experience of the local culture. but it needs that extra push, that targeted approach that goes beyond just counting how many visitors come through.
So it's not just about attracting tourists, it's about attracting the right tourists.
Exactly. The ones who are genuinely interested in experiencing Yamagata City and the surrounding region, the ones who want to take their time, spend their money, and really uncover those hidden
But
gems.
how do you even begin to do that? The whole world of travelers out there.
It all starts with understanding those different travel styles, the motivations, the preferences. And that's where this report gets really interesting. They analyzed how tourists arrive in Yamagata City, specifically which airports they're using. And this data, it reveals some patterns that could really shape the future of Yamagata City's tourism strategy.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me about these airport adventures. Are they flying in on private jets, landing on tiny rural airstrips?
Not quite. So the report found that over 40% of international tourists arrive through Narita Airport, one of Japan's major international hubs. And Sendai Airport and Haneda Airport in Tokyo, they also see a significant number of arrivals.
Okay, so they're using those major gateways and then making their way over to Yamagata City.
Exactly, makes sense, especially for those long-haul flights.
But what about Yamagata Airport? It's right there. Are they not using that?
That's the interesting part. Yamagata Airport, despite being right in the prefecture, only handles a tiny fraction of those international arrivals.
Huh. That does seem like a missed opportunity. If they could attract more international flights to Yamagata Airport, it could really give tourism a boost. Think about it. No more long train rides or transfers for those tourists who are short on time.
It would definitely be a game changer. But it would take some serious investment and planning. You'd need to convince those airlines to add those routes.
Right, show them it's worth it.
Exactly. It's a good example, though, of how this kind of data can reveal potential areas for improvement and get those conversations started.
It's like data-driven brainstorming.
I like that.
But before we go off on a tangent about airport expansion, let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture. The report compared Yamagata's Mount Zao to Hakuba, which is a really popular mountain resort in Nagano Prefecture.
Oh, yeah, Hakuba. I've heard it's great.
It is. So are they like battling it out for the best mountain destination?
Uh-huh. Not quite a battle, but it is an interesting comparison. So Hakuba attracts way more tourists overall, but both destinations actually see a pretty similar number of Asian tourists.
Okay, so they're both popular with the Asian market. But Hakuba seems to be attracting a much more diverse international crowd, right?
Exactly. And the report kind of dives into this. They looked at the nationality breakdown of overnight visitors, and it suggests that Hakuba might offer just a wider range of accommodation styles and nightlife activities that appeal to different preferences.
So it's not just about hitting the slopes. It's about that overall experience. Hakuba has that après-ski scene figured out.
Right. You're not just skiing all day, you want that cozy lodge, a good meal, maybe some live music, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I get it. So what can Yamagata City learn from that? Do they need to build, like, a giant karaoke bar on Mount Zao?
Haha. Maybe not karaoke, but they can definitely learn from Hakuba's approach. It's all about figuring out what those different types of tourists are looking for and tailoring their offerings to meet those expectations.
So becoming tourism anthropologists.
Exactly. Observe those travel patterns, adapt to those unique cultural preferences.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
But we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, and there's so much more to uncover.
There is. We just scratched the surface of this report. We still need to, really delve into their recommendations for boosting Yamagata City's appeal to specific types of tourists, especially those big spenders who are looking for something really unique.
Right. We've got to figure out how to transform Yamagata City from a quick stop into a must-see destination. But that's a conversation for part 2 of our deep dive.
I can't wait.
Stay tuned, folks.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Remember that Hakuba comparison, the one we started in the last part? It's time to dig into what Yamagata City can actually learn from it.
Yeah, Hakuba, the winter wonderland. It seems to attract tourists from everywhere, but especially Australians. The report definitely hinted that Hakuba is doing something right that Yamagata City could learn from.
Exactly. Remember, both places attract a similar number of Asian tourists, but Hakuba, they're pulling in way more visitors from other parts of the world. And the report kind of digs into that. It looks at the types of accommodations and nightlife activities that are available in Hakuba.
So it's not just about the skiing, but also about the whole experience, like what you do after you're done on the slopes for the day.
Exactly. Think about it. After a long day on the mountain, what do you want? You probably want a cozy lodge, a fireplace, a good meal, a place to relax and chat with other skiers.
Yeah. Or maybe some people want something a little more exciting, like a fun bar scene, maybe some live music, a place to dance.
Right. And the report really emphasizes how important this is when you're trying to attract those higher spending travelers, you
Yeah,
know?
those tourists who are looking for the whole package.
Exactly. Luxury accommodations, amazing restaurants, those unique cultural experiences, and yeah, even some nightlife.
So going beyond just the basics and creating a destination that really appeals to people with, well, let's say, more expensive tastes.
You got it. Think about it like Michelin star restaurants, fancy cocktail bars, maybe even a world-class spa. It's about elevating the whole experience and showing off what's unique about Yamagata City, but in a way that will appeal to people who, maybe have a little more money to spend.
Right. And making it clear that they're going to be well taken care of.
Exactly. We're not saying turn Yamagata City into a party town or anything, but maybe just add a little more sophistication to the experience so it appeals to a wider range of visitors.
It's about figuring out how to offer those different kinds of experiences without losing the charm and authenticity of Yamagata City. It's a tough balance.
It is.
But how do you even reach those high-spending travelers? Do you, send them personalized postcards?
Uh-huh. Maybe. But the report really focuses on something called targeted marketing strategies. So think, like advertising in those fancy travel magazines, working with high-end travel agencies, maybe even doing collaborations with like social media influencers who have a lot of followers who are interested in luxury travel.
So it's all about being really strategic with your advertising, making sure you reach the right people with the right message.
Yes. You wouldn't advertise a luxury ski chalet in a backpacker's guide, right?
Right.
You have to understand what motivates those high-spending travelers, what they like to see, and where they're going to get their inspiration for planning their trips. And then you target your marketing to all of that.
Makes sense. But let's switch gears for a second. Remember that point about how some tourists, especially the ones from Taiwan, use Yamagata City as like a quick stop? I'm really curious about where those people go before or after they visit Yamagata.
Okay, let's see where they go. The report actually used mobile location data to map out those travel patterns. And it turns out that a big chunk, over 59%, also visit Sendai.
Sendai, the capital of Miyagi Prefecture. I've heard it's amazing, beautiful parks, lots of history, great food, and it's not far from Yamagata City, right?
Right. So it makes sense that people would visit both places on the same trip.
It's like a two-for-one deal. You get the peace and quiet of Yamagata and then the excitement of Sendai.
Exactly. Two different experiences, all in one trip. And it gets even better. Over 53% of those tourists also go to Obanazawa City, which is also in Yamagata Prefecture.
Obanazawa. Okay, I admit I haven't heard of that one.
Oh, it's a real hidden gem. They have streets from the Edo period, hot springs, sake breweries. It's a great place to go if you want to experience what Japan was like a long time ago.
So you've got Sendai for that modern city vibe, and then Obanazawa for a taste of traditional Japan. Sounds like a perfect trip. But what about the tourists who go beyond the Tohoku region?
The report tracked them too. And no surprise, a lot of them, around 30%, go to Narita City, which is where Narita International Airport is.
Right, that's where a lot of international flights come in and out of Japan.
Exactly. So for a lot of tourists, Narita is just a quick stop on their way in or out of the country.
But even knowing that little piece of information is helpful for Yamagata City. If they know that a lot of tourists are coming through Narita, maybe they can figure out a way to, make it easier for those people to get over to Yamagata.
Right. It really highlights how important it is to have easy and efficient transportation options.
Especially if you're in a new country and maybe don't speak the language.
Yeah.
It can be a little overwhelming trying to figure out a complicated public transportation system.
It definitely can. And that's where partnerships come in. The report suggests that Yamagata City should work with airlines to try to increase the number of international flights coming into Yamagata Airport.
Now, that would be amazing. Imagine you just get off the plane and you're already right there in Yamagata City, ready to explore. But to attract those airlines, you need to show them that it's a good investment.
You got it. You need to convince them that those flights will be full of tourists.
It's a tough problem to solve. You need more tourists to justify adding more flights, but you need more flights to get more tourists.
It's a classic chicken and egg situation. But if they can figure it out, the benefits could be huge.
Definitely worth exploring. Okay, we've covered a lot today, but there's one last piece we need to explore.
I know what you're thinking.
You do.
We still need to talk about the report's recommendations for attracting those tourists who have money to spend, the ones who are looking for something really special and personalized.
Exactly. That's where the real potential is. And it's such a big topic. We definitely need to do a deep dive into it.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go. We've got some secrets to uncover.
Welcome back, deep divers. We're on the last part of our journey into Yamagata City's tourism scene.
And this time, we're bringing out the fancy stuff. We're talking about those travelers with money to spend.
Right, like private tours, those amazing traditional Japanese inns, the ryokans, maybe even a helicopter ride over Mount Zhao.
Now you're talking. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The report actually highlights something interesting. Yamagata City already has a lot of what those high-end travelers are looking for.
Really, I always thought it was more of a budget-friendly destination.
Well, it is, but there's more to it than that. Yamagata City has a really rich cultural heritage, amazing natural beauty, and the food scene is getting better and better. Those are all things that appeal to travelers who, want a more exclusive experience.
Okay, so the pieces are all there. They just need to be put together in the right way. So how do you actually create a luxury travel experience out of that? What's the magic formula?
The report actually breaks it down into 3 key things: exclusivity, personalization, and authenticity.
Okay, so let's break those down. What do they mean by exclusivity?
Basically, it means offering experiences that are unique and limited. Things you can't find on a normal tour. Like, imagine a private sake tasting at a brewery that's been around for hundreds of years, or a special art tour led by a local expert.
So it's all about crafting those unique experiences. What about personalization? Is that like just remembering someone's name and what they like to drink?
It's more than that. It's about anticipating their needs and making sure everything is tailored to them from start to finish. Imagine this. You arrive at your ryokan, and there's a welcome basket waiting for you, filled with treats from the local area, and a handwritten note from the owner.
Okay, yeah. That would make you feel special, like they really thought about you.
Exactly. It's about going above and beyond to make people feel welcome and valued. And then the last thing is authenticity, which we hear a lot about these days.
Yeah, it seems like everyone wants to experience the real version of a place, to find those hidden gems that most tourists miss.
Right. And in this case, it's about showing off Yamagata City's unique culture and history in a way that feels genuine and meaningful. So think about like farm-to-table dinners where they use all local ingredients, or guided tours led by people who grew up in the area, or even workshops where you can learn traditional Japanese crafts.
So it's about giving visitors a chance to really connect with the heart of Yamagata City, to experience what makes it special.
Exactly. And the cool thing is that these authentic experiences don't have to be, roughing it. You can still have luxury accommodations and amazing service while experiencing those authentic things.
So it's the best of both worlds, luxury and authenticity. But let's be real, all of this sounds expensive. Are there really enough people willing to pay for that kind of experience?
Well, according to the report, the luxury travel market is growing, especially among younger people who want those unique and meaningful experiences. And Yamagata City is perfectly set up to take advantage of that trend.
It's in a great location, beautiful, lots of history. It makes sense.
Exactly. But it's not just about attracting first-time visitors. It's about creating experiences that will make them want to come back again and again.
And tell all their friends about it too, right?
Exactly. That word-of-mouth advertising is really powerful. If people have an amazing time, they're going to tell everyone about it. They'll post pictures online. They become like ambassadors for Yamagata City.
It's like turning those luxury travelers into fans. But let's not forget about that whole airport situation. Remember, Yamagata Airport doesn't get many international flights. And for luxury travelers, that's a big deal. They're used to private jets and things like that.
That's definitely a hurdle, but the report has some ideas for that too, like maybe partnering with luxury transportation companies to offer private transfers from those bigger airports, or even, chartering flights directly to Yamagata Airport for those who really want that VIP treatment.
Okay, so thinking outside the box a little bit,
Mhm.
making sure every part of their trip is amazing from the moment they arrive until they leave.
Exactly. Personalized service, staff who speak multiple languages, a real understanding of what luxury travelers expect.
Like rolling out the red carpet, but with a Japanese touch. But all this talk about luxury travel is making me wonder, does this mean Yamagata City should just forget about everyone else and only focus on attracting the wealthy?
Not at all. It's really about finding that balance, offering things for people with different budgets and travel styles without losing what makes the city so special.
So it's about diversifying.
Exactly. Yamagata City can still be a great place for skiers and snowboarders, for backpackers, for anyone who wants a more budget-friendly experience. But they can also offer those high-end experiences that will attract a whole new group of travelers.
And those high-spending travelers can really help the local economy grow.
That's the idea. It's about smart growth, making sure that tourism benefits everyone, visitors and locals alike, and using data to make those smart decisions.
It's about using that data to tell a story about Yamagata City, to reach the right people and create experiences that they'll never forget. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Yamagata City, what's the one big takeaway for our listeners today?
Today's key takeaway: Yamagata City is ready to become a world-class destination. It just needs the right approach to tourism.
With a little strategy, a bit of creativity, and a whole lot of data, Yamagata City can transform itself from a hidden gem into that must-see destination. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Yamagata City tourism. We hope you enjoyed the journey. Be sure to join us next time for another deep dive into a new topic. EcoHub Podcast.